The story today is from Japan and revolves around a person with such unique abilities that he was often referred to as a magician. Using these skills, he managed to escape from high-security prisons multiple times. While the world has countless stories of prison breaks, today's tale is among those rare ones that will leave you astonished, and the full details will unfold as the story progresses. The story begins in 1936. In 1936, the Japanese police arrested a 29-year-old man from the city for robbery and the murder of a person. The man confessed to the robbery, but denied committing the murder. Following this, the police presented him in court, which handed him a sentence, though his trial was still ongoing. The arrested man was named Siratori. He was born on July 31st, 1906, in the city of Japanuri. His father passed away during his childhood, leaving him burdened with responsibilities at an early age. He started working at the age of 13. Initially, he worked at a tofu shop, but later, he became a fisherman, working to catch crabs for Russia. However, these jobs did not meet his needs, and he wanted to earn more money as quickly as possible. This desire pushed him into the world of crime. He began robbing and stealing from people, living a life of comfort and luxury. During this period, he also got married to a woman and had a daughter. In 1936, during an investigation into a murder committed during a robbery, the Japanese police were searching for the culprit and coincidentally came across Siratori. Since he was a professional thief and robber, the police arrested him and sent him to Aomori Prison, even though he had not committed the murder. Thus Siratori found himself in Aomori Prison, passing his days there while in court the public prosecutor was demanding the death penalty for him. One morning when the prison guards approached Shiratori's cell, they noticed that he was still asleep. Prisons have certain rules and regulations where prisoners are required to sleep, wake up, and follow a strict schedule. Since he had not woken up that day, the guard became suspicious. The guard entered the cell angrily and pulled off the blanket covering him. However, as soon as the blanket was removed, the guard was shocked. When Siratori arrived at Aomori Prison, he was treated very harshly. He was beaten daily and subjected to verbal abuse. This treatment wasn't exclusive to him. It was common for all prisoners in the jail. During that period, most of the prisons in Japan, with a few exceptions, were in terrible condition, and inmates were treated inhumanely. Additionally, in court, the public prosecutor was demanding the death penalty for a crime he hadn't committed. To escape the torture in prison and the looming death sentence, Siratori decided to plan his escape. For the first few months, he closely observed the pattern of the guards' patrol routines, when their shifts changed, how long it took for them to return to the same spot, and how many times they patrolled during the day. After months of observation, he noticed that there was a 15-minute gap between two guards patrolling his cell. This pattern remained consistent throughout the day. He decided to use this 15-minute window to escape from his cell. However, there was a significant challenge. After getting out of his cell, he would still have to open 6 more doors to exit the prison. Only then could he make his escape. And to open all these 6 doors, he had only 15 minutes. Here he used his first skill, which was lockpicking. Actually, he had such a talent that if he found even a small piece of iron wire or a scrap, he could open any lock in under a minute. One day, he stole the wire tied to the bucket given to him for bathing. After that, one night, he made all the preparations to escape. At around 5:30 in the morning, when a guard passed by his cell, he first placed a pillow and other items under his blanket in such a way that it looked like he was sleeping there. In the next 15 minutes, not only did he unlock all 6 doors, but he also locked them back so that no one would suspect anything until morning, and he escaped from the prison. Around 5:45, when the guard passed by his cell again, he saw that Shira was still sleeping. However, under the blanket, there was only a pillow. The next morning, Siratori was searched everywhere, inside and outside the prison, but he was nowhere to be found because by then he had gone far from the prison. This was his first jailbreak. However, Shiratori's freedom lasted only 3 days. After escaping the prison, He was hiding in Aomori itself, avoiding detection because the police were searching for him everywhere. He had neither money nor food, so he entered a hospital and started stealing items from there. But the hospital staff caught him and handed him over to the Japanese police. The police had already been looking for him, and as soon as they got him, they sent him back to Aomori prison. After this, additional charges of murder, robbery, and jailbreak were filed against Siratori, and the court sentenced him to life imprisonment for murder, robbery, and escaping prison. Shira spent the next several years in Aomori prison. In 1939, World War II began, dividing the entire world into two factions. Japan was also part of this war, fighting against the Allied powers, which included Britain, America, the Soviet Union, and France. During the war, in 1942, for security reasons, Siratori was transferred from Aomori prison to Akita prison because Akita prison was considered more secure than Aomori prison. Moreover, when the guards at Akita prison learned that Siratori had previously escaped from prison, they built a special cell for him. The size of the cell was so small that only one person could lie down in it. The walls of the cell were made of copper and were very smooth. The door of the cell was also not a grilled one, but entirely solid. The cell had only one window, located on its ceiling, to allow air and light to enter. When Siratori Agita arrived at the jail, he was placed in a special cell specifically built for him. Secondly, considering his record of jailbreaks, the jail guards were extremely hostile toward him. The guards treated Siratori worse than the inmates of Aomori jail. He was beaten daily and forced to work significantly more than other prisoners. Additionally, he was kept handcuffed 24 hours a day and was made to sleep on the floor even during winters without being provided warm clothing. However, the head guard of the jail, who was known for being compassionate, never mistreated him and often stopped other guards when they attempted to harass Siratori. Months passed, but the guards did not stop torturing him. Then came the date, June 15th, 1942. On the midnight of June 15th, 1942, when a guard peeked into Siratori's cell through the window, his eyes widened in shock. Siratori had disappeared from the cell. Other guards also rushed there, and upon entering the cell, they found nothing but his handcuffs. When they looked up at the cell's ceiling, they saw that the window there was missing. It didn't take long for them to understand the situation, but they couldn't figure out how Siratori had reached the ceiling. The story that emerged was as follows. As soon as he arrived at the jail, Siratori began planning his escape. To execute his plan, he used his unique ability. He could climb even the smoothest walls like a lizard. After entering the jail, he first managed to acquire a piece of metal from somewhere. He was already skilled at unlocking handcuffs. So at night, after the guards left, he would unlock his handcuffs whenever he got some time and practice climbing the copper walls. Within a few days of practice, he managed to reach the window on the ceiling. He noticed that although the window was made of metal, its frame was wooden. Every night he would unlock his handcuffs, climb up, and try to loosen the wooden frame of the window. Then he would return, put his handcuffs back on, and sit as if nothing had happened. After months of effort one day, the window finally came loose. However, he didn't escape that day and waited for the right moment. And the right time came. The date was June 15th, 1942. That night there was heavy rain along with a storm. Taking advantage of this rain and storm, he first opened the handcuffs, went upstairs, and then removed the window to disappear through the roof of the jail. In the rain and storm, the sound of his footsteps didn't reach any guard. After escaping, Siratori wanted to go back to his home, but didn't go thinking that the police would be watching his house. So he started living in hiding within the city of Gita. On the other side, the guards of Gita jail were searching for him everywhere. Even Japan's police started searching for him like madmen, but there was no trace of Siratori. About 3 months passed, and on the night of September 18th, 1942, when Akita jail's head guard, Kobayashi, was at his house, suddenly someone knocked on his door. When he opened the door, He was stunned because Siratori himself was standing there. Siratori was in a very poor condition, so Kobayashi invited him in and gave him food. After that, he asked Siratori why he returned to him after escaping from jail. Siratori said that he never wanted to escape from jail, but because of how the guards treated the prisoners like animals, he was forced to escape. Siratori added that Kobayashi was the only one who treated him well, and that's why he came to him for help. Siratori said he wanted to surrender, but not to the police, rather to Japan's Justice Department so he could tell them about how prisoners were being treated in the jail. Kobayashi promised to help him but didn't. When Siratori went to the bathroom, Kobayashi called the police. A little later, Japan's police arrived at the house and arrested Siratori. After being betrayed by Kobayashi, Siratori decided he would never trust anyone again. Anyway, after being caught, Siratori was tried again for the crime of escaping jail. For this jailbreak, 3 more years were added to his life sentence. Siratori admitted his mistake and said he was fully ready to return to jail, but he also requested to be sent to a jail in Tokyo. At that time, Tokyo's jail had better conditions compared to other jails in Japan, and the weather there was warmer. However, the court rejected Shiratori's appeal, and considering his history of 2 jailbreaks, sent him to Abashiri Jail, which was located in the northernmost part of Japan in Hokkaido. The history of Abashiri Jail was such that no prisoner had ever escaped because the jail's security was extremely strong. If anyone even attempted to escape, they were shot on sight. Abashiri Jail housed Japan's most dangerous and brutal criminals. Even if, by some chance, a prisoner managed to escape all the security and the guards' watchful eyes, survival outside was impossible. The jail was surrounded by snow-covered mountains for several kilometers, and the area experienced snow for most of the year. Even in summer, the temperature remained below 0 degrees Celsius. Because of these conditions, it was said that no one could escape this jail. A special cell was made for Siratori in this jail as well. This time, all the windows and doors were made extremely strong. Additionally, the size of the window was made smaller than Shiratori's body, so that even if he managed to remove the window frame, he wouldn't be able to get out.
He vented all his anger on him, beating him badly, abusing him, mocking him, and saying, "Run away from here if you can." One day, several guards together beat Siratori so much that, in anger, he broke his handcuffs right in front of the guards and challenged them, saying he would escape from there. Seeing this, they discovered his third capability, his superhuman-like strength, which he demonstrated by breaking iron handcuffs. After witnessing his strength, the prison guards understood that unlocking or breaking normal handcuffs was child's play for Siratori. Therefore, they got special handcuffs and shackles made for him. The uniqueness of these handcuffs and shackles was that there was no place to insert a key anywhere, making it impossible to open them. Both the handcuffs and shackles weighed 20 kilograms each, making them impossible to break by human capability. Siratori was made to wear these handcuffs and shackles and was kept in them 24 hours a day. Even during meals, his handcuffs were not removed, forcing him to eat like an animal. These handcuffs also made it very difficult for him to sleep. Once every 2 to 3 weeks, his handcuffs and shackles were removed for bathing and changing clothes. Even for this, 2 special craftsmen were brought from outside, and it took them about 2 hours to remove the handcuffs and shackles. About a year passed like this, and then came August 26, 1944. As I mentioned earlier, the Second World War was ongoing at that time. On the night of August 26, 1944, a wartime blackout was declared in Japan. Wartime blackouts were declared during the war when enemy planes were expected to attack at night. During such times, all lights in homes were turned off, and all doors and windows were covered with black cloth to prevent even a glimmer of light from escaping outside, ensuring that enemy planes could not locate their targets. On the night of August 26, 1944, during the blackout, a guard at Baba Prison heard footsteps on the roof. He went outside to check but found no one. However, When he peeked into Siratori's cell, he was shocked to see that the 20-kilogram handcuffs were lying in a corner, and Siratori had escaped from the prison for the third time. The question now arose: how did he escape? Siratori had been preparing for this for the past 6 months. Every day he was given a bowl along with his food. He used to save a little soup in the bowl every day, and when the guards weren't looking, would pour it little by little onto the metal bars of the cell door through the small window designed for surveillance. Additionally, he poured the leftover soup on the joints of his handcuffs and shackles. He did this continuously for 6 months. His aim was to use the salt in the soup to rust the metal of the handcuffs in the door frame. After 6 months of continuous effort, his plan succeeded, and rust began forming on the metal due to the reaction between the iron and the salt. By August 1944, all the nuts and bolts on the window grill of his door had rusted. On the night of August 26, 1944, taking advantage of the blackout, he used all his strength to break the rusted handcuffs and shackles. No one knows where he got such strength. After breaking them, he removed the grill of the door window along with the frame. However, another problem arose. The size of all the windows in the cell was deliberately made smaller than the size of his body. Even after removing the frame, there wasn't enough space for him to pass through.
At this point, he used his fourth capability, dislocating the joints of his bones to make his body smaller. First, he removed all his clothes except for his underwear. Then he dislocated both his shoulders and squeezed himself through the window to escape from his cell. After this, he climbed onto the roof of the prison and disappeared into the darkness, taking advantage of the blackout. Siratori became the first prisoner to escape from Baba Prison. He knew that because of the blackout, the guards wouldn't be able to search for him extensively during the night, giving him enough time to escape the area. That's exactly what happened. The guards didn't search much for him that night, but the next morning, they searched everywhere. However, they couldn't find him. Over the next few days, they searched further afield, but they only found snow-covered mountains and wild animals. They were somewhat relieved, believing that if Siratori somehow escaped the wild animals, the freezing cold would still kill him. After several months of searching, when Siratori wasn't found, they became certain he had either died or been eaten by a wild animal. Slowly, the search subsided. Meanwhile, in 1945, America dropped atomic bombs on Japan, and Japan surrendered, putting the entire country under American control. With time, Siratori's escape was forgotten, as attention shifted to other matters under American administration. About 2 years later, at the end of 1946, a man was arrested in Japan on murder charges. Upon identifying the killer, they realized it was Siratori, who had already been serving a life sentence and had escaped from prison 3 times. Siratori then recounted his story from the past 2 years to the police. After escaping from Baba Prison, he found a cave amidst snow-covered mountains and made it his home. To survive the cold, he lit fires and hunted small animals for food. For 2 years, he lived in complete isolation. However, after 2 years, he couldn't take it anymore and came out. Upon returning to civilization, he was stunned to see American soldiers everywhere. Everything was written in both Japanese and English, and Japanese women were seen with American men. He couldn't believe his eyes. He immediately started looking through newspapers, where he learned that America had dropped atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, forcing Japan to surrender the previous year, ending the Second World War. Since America now controlled all of Japan, he decided there was no point in hiding anymore, believing everyone must have forgotten him by now. At that moment, he sees a tomato field and starts plucking tomatoes to eat without asking for permission. However, the farmer of the field arrives there, assuming he is a thief, as there had been frequent thefts in the area. In a fit of anger, the farmer attacks him with a hoe. In self-defense, Shera retaliates and accidentally hits the farmer with the hoe, resulting in the farmer's death. When the locals witness this, they catch Shera and hand him over to the police. Thus, after about 2 years of his third jailbreak, he was once again in police custody. he was presented in the district court of Sapno, a fictional or misnamed place. Shera appealed in the records, stating that the farmer's death occurred accidentally during a scuffle in self-defense. However, none of his claims were heard in court, and in 1947, he was sentenced to death for the murder. In the jail, a special cell was built for Shera. Its walls, ceiling, and door were reinforced with steel. This time, the windows in the cell were made smaller than the size of Shera's head to ensure he could not escape, as he was known to manipulate his body size but could not change the size of his head. Additionally, 6,000 guards were specially deployed to monitor him around the clock. He was not handcuffed because the authorities were confident in their security measures, and even if they had used handcuffs, it would have been futile as Shera could open them with ease. Shera spent his days in jail awaiting his execution. Often he would gaze at the high ceiling of his cell. The 6 guards who kept an eye on him 24/7 would laugh at him, assuming he was once again planning an escape through the roof. Periodically, the guards checked the ceiling, walls, and windows of his cell, but found nothing suspicious. After a few months, Shera developed a habit of excessive sleeping. He would lie on his mattress all day and often wouldn't wake up on time in the morning. This habit annoyed the guards, and they sometimes reprimanded him. Yet, Shera did not change his ways. Several times, he would only wake up when forcibly shaken by the guards. Over time, seeing his aging body, he was around 40 years old by then, some of the kinder guards allowed him to sleep longer. As he continued his routine without incident for months, the guards gradually became less vigilant. One day, when Shera didn't wake up despite repeated calls, an irritated guard opened his cell and angrily pulled away his blanket, only to find a pillow beneath it. The guards panicked. They checked the doors, windows, ceiling, and walls of the cell, but found no signs of damage or escape. They were baffled as to where Shera had vanished. At that moment, one of the guards lifted the mattress and discovered their mistake. Underneath the mattress, they found a tunnel. Despite reinforcing the handcuffs, walls, windows, and ceiling, they had overlooked the floor. Over the past several months, Shera had been digging a tunnel under his mattress. Whenever the guards took their eyes off him for even a minute, Shera would place the pillow in his place and start digging the tunnel with a soup bowl. You might wonder where he hid the excavated soil. The wooden floor beneath his mattress had a small gap designed to prevent the wood from rotting, and Shera cleverly used that space to hide the soil. Initially, Shera's habit of looking up at the ceiling was a ploy to mislead the guards into thinking he was planning an escape from above. Consequently, they never paid attention to the floor, which ultimately led to his successful escape. Apart from that, the habit he developed of sleeping late was also part of his plan so that, over time, the guard would become careless about him, and when he placed the pillow and started digging underneath, the guard wouldn't check. A few months later, when Siratori completed the tunnel, he escaped from the Sapporo jail through it, and this was his 4th jailbreak. After this, Tori was searched in many places, but he was nowhere to be found. On the other hand, after escaping from Shahpur jail, Siratori remained hidden and kept moving here and there for nearly a year. In 1948, one day, he was sitting on a bench in a city park. Just then, a police officer came and sat beside him and started smoking a cigarette. Seeing this, Siratori became nervous. At first, he thought of getting up and leaving from there, but then he thought it might make the police officer suspicious. So, he continued sitting on the bench. Meanwhile, the police officer took out his cigarette box and offered a cigarette to Siratori. Seeing this, Siratori was stunned because in those days, cigarettes were considered a luxury item and only wealthy people smoked them. Anyway, when the officer offered him a cigarette, Siratori accepted it and began smoking. However, while smoking, Siratori's eyes filled with tears because until now, every police officer he had met had treated him like an animal. Even the guard he trusted with his story betrayed him. But when a police officer who appeared to be of a high rank based on his uniform casually offered him a cigarette, his behavior deeply moved Siratori. It made him realize that not all police officers are the same, and he began feeling very guilty. After this, Siratori told the police officer his full name. Hearing this, the officer was also shocked. Then, Siratori narrated his entire story, explaining why he escaped from jail every time. This time, the police officer Siratori trusted turned out to be honest. After hearing Shiratori's story, the officer presented him before Japan's Justice Department, where Siratori disclosed the animal-like treatment prisoners were subjected to in jail. After this, Siratori was presented in the High Court. Upon properly investigating his case, they found that the farmer's murder had happened accidentally in self-defense. Moreover, whenever he broke out of jail, he never harmed any guard or caused any damage, even though the jail guards constantly tortured him. Thus, the Sapporo High Court overturned Shiratori's death sentence and sentenced him to 20 years in prison. This time, his appeal to be kept in a Tokyo jail was also granted, and he was sent to Tokyo's Fuchu jail. All arrangements were made to prevent his escape. However, because Fuchu jail was in Tokyo, Japan, the weather there was warm, and the guards treated Shiratori well. Therefore, this time, he decided to serve his entire sentence in that jail and not escape. Approximately 14 years later, in 1961, due to his good behavior, he was released on parole, and this was the first time Siratori came out of jail legally. He no longer had to fear the police. After this, he went to Mori, where his family lived. But when Siratori reached home, he found out that his wife had passed away a few years earlier. However, his daughter was still living there and had grown up. For the next several years, he did small jobs and lived with his daughter. On February 24th, 1989, at the age of 71, Siratori died of a heart attack. In conclusion, Siratori was the only person in Japan's history for whom every method was employed to prevent him from escaping jail. Yet he managed to escape, not once or twice, but 4 times. Later, his story began to be regarded as that of a hero. Furthermore, many books and films were created based on Shiratori's life. The way Siratori used miso soup to escape jail became so famous that a part of the jail was turned into a museum. Today, a statue of him stands in the museum, depicting how he escaped from that jail. If you ever visit Japan's Abashiri, make sure to visit the museum. So this was the complete story. I hope you all liked the information I shared,